Special thanks to Roseburg Forest Products for sponsoring this video.
Okay, let me show you some I-joist rafter framing details. There's a section on this house where we elected to go I-joist, and that gets us like 32-foot long rafters. I have ordered 30-foot 2x12 before. That was not fun. We actually lifted those with a forklift many years ago. Anyway, these are the Roseburg 20 series I-joists, and we can use them as rafters, but there are some details that go into it. This is one of them. So you saw in a video this week that we ripped some 2x4 down to 3 inches, and then with the table saw set at about 30 degrees and the material rotated vertically, then we were able to cut cant strips and get 2 out of each piece. The cant strip is just the beveled piece that nails onto the top plates. What this does is it eliminates the need to cut a bird's mouth. If we cut a bird's mouth in these, then we have to use web stiffeners. You could argue that web stiffeners are just as easy to install and cut as ripping a cant strip. I just prefer this, and it maximizes the height above the plate.
Believe it or not, the first time that we used I-joists as rafters was back in 2006, and they were in fact Roseburg I-joists. Coincidentally, the roof slope on that house was also 712. I needed to rip 2x4 10-footers down to 3 inches so that I could get 2 pieces out of each.
1.5 this direction, 3/4 that direction, and then the rise run was, as I just blast myself in the face. Yeah, so there's 1.5 inches. This side I can see a little bit more easily. So there's burn 1 inch, 1.5 inches is like, yeah, I did a pretty good job on that last one. And now I'm just going to connect the dots, and they should go right through the center. So now we should be able to get each piece out of each. So we're going to go just under 30, 29.78 with that blade. Are we roughly parallel? Like with the edge of the table?
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty good.
Okay. Like off of this, I'm 5.5. I can't get that one.
What you got? 10.5? 10.5?
I don't know, man.
You don't even need to.
Do we even need levels anymore in squares?
Nah.
Hey, we just take these and fling them. Just throw them in the woods. I don't need this thing.
Let's stop using math, too.
So my angle on the board doesn't quite match the saw tilt. So I'm going to kind of make the saw tilt, I think, match. I'm just going to, it's just fudging, you know. I'm aiming for the bottom right corner and the top left corner. And I think we're just going to make it. Like if 2 7/8 probably would have been a better rip. Not really. I came through it this way.
Yep.
So I think we need to go that way a hair.
Okay.
Okay, I am 10 and 6. 10 and 6. Let's go 10.5. You're pretty good there. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Well, you know, it always takes a little bit of trial and error. Kind of making this stuff up. You notice we're using a 4x6 as a fence, and then because the blade's coming out at such an angle, we screwed a little 2x that was cut. Basically, I didn't want to cut the metal fence. Now, so what I wish I would have done was cut them 2 7/8. What ended up happening is when we broke them apart, we had just a little bit of a lip that we just chiseled off or knifed off. Used our knife. I can't even remember. I think we just used our knife.
We used the SDWC truss and rafter screw in place of hurricane clips, and I'll do a test in the future to show you why we can use screws and they're not brittle. Has to do with the heat treatment, so spoilers. Anyway, we're going to nail that cant strip down to the plates with 8 penny nails.
The reason for the 8-penny nails is because we don't want to split anything out. Now, this is the intermediate wall. You can see it lines up with a rake wall on each end. And I'm actually holding that cant strip back a little bit because I planed it through with my speed score and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to get hung up on the edge of the wall. I also didn't want to project past because that would raise the height above plate for the rafters and they wouldn't plane with the rake wall. Since the rips weren't perfect, I was trying to plane them with the wall. That's why it doesn't look super straight.
But when it comes time to fasten the eye joist, we're going to use this screw. It's going to go through the flange right through both plates, and that's going to provide our uplift.
Incidentally, you may not be able to find some of these details online. For example, the SDWC truss and rafter screw that I'm using here. Do I need one? Do I need two? I went ahead and did two. Our engineer actually did do a site visit, came out here. I had sent him section details I drew in SketchUp and explained, hey, we're going to partner with Roseburg on the eye joist. Here's what I was thinking of doing, and he is okay with it.
Yeah, those don't split at all. Righteous.
Well, where are the tails? You're just going to have to keep watching. There's that pre-installed LP soffit, by the way.
Okay. A couple of other details on this house. Typically when we span an opening, we're going to use a glue lam. And the rafters are going to come down and they're going to nail right to this. So think of it like common trusses that meet a girder truss. And then they get hangered and then the roof overframes. Now how do we do that with eye joists? Well, you notice that I have web stiffeners here. This is just scrap 3/4 inch. It works perfect for the 20 series eye joist from Roseburg. That this is now smooth. We have to add these. It's coming out of scrap. It's a pretty quick step. Couple of 8s this way, clinched, couple 8s from the other way, clinch the nails or bend them over. Now you might have seen on social media sometimes where people make a slice here and they put a hanger in here. Don't do that. Now you're putting a slice into the grain, and this is our structural connection for a rafter. So how do we avoid doing that and also get a hanger? I'm so glad you asked. This is the Simpson Strong-Tie LSSR 1.81. The 1.81 is just a reference to the width of the seat. It corresponds to the flange width. These are 1 3/4. Convert it to decimal, and just a little bit of play and you get 1.81 inches. Now here's what makes these special. Look at that, each of these, I mean, it could also be an exercise thing, but these swivel. And so what that allows us to do is a normal joist hanger, this seat is 90 degrees. I'm calling these the ears, right? I call them the ear anyway. So that's 90 degrees to this, but now we can slope both directions, by the way. See that? Isn't that cool? Not to mention, these also can be skewed, so we could use them for a jack rafter. And a jack rafter has a compound miter. It has a plumb cut for the slope of the roof, and then depending on if the pitches are equal or not, then it skews left or right. So we can slope it and skew it. So here's what that looks like. This is how our rafter is going to come into the glue lam, and we're going to toenail on each side. Then, once we make sure everything planes and we like it, then we're just going to install the hanger. And now we have a structural connection. So that's at the bottom. What about at the top?
Before we get to the ridge connection, let me show you the connection at the bottom. So that glue lam spans the opening. You can see the gable behind it. We're going to have two intersecting roofs right there. There's a little better look at it. These rafters then die into that glue lam, which has been sized to carry the load. Think of it like a girder truss. We always hanger common trusses into girder trusses. A couple of things about this hanger. When you look up the installation instructions, it says to put those 2 nails at the bottom of the seat. Those are 1.5 inch nails. All of the nails into the web stiffener and eye joist are 1.5 inch. Then we're going to use 2.5 inch to actually connect it to that glue lam. Again, before I took this step, I reviewed it with Simpson Strong-Tie and our engineer. One other thing I wanted to point out. We bought those Little Giant planks off of Amazon because I always buy local. Those have been like the best purchase we've had in years. One side is sitting in a Louisville ladder. Again, tripod ladders has been our staple since the 80s, maybe the late 70s. I don't know that for sure, though they were the old wood ones, and as they got old, they got pretty rickety and heavy. And this is the Beck America. It says Fasco. It changed. It's the F70G. I reviewed that for JLC, I believe in 2020. It's been a fantastic tool. After the hanger is connected to the joist, then we connect the hanger to the beam. And that again is those 2.5 inch nails.
by the way. This is what that looks like. I just put a couple nails here. So it goes like that. You could, if you wanted, pre-install these, but I think it's going to be easier to do it. After the fact. Now at the top, at the ridge, I typically like the heel of my rafter, which is this, to land somewhere at the bottom of the ridge or even up just a hair. And you notice then we have a gap above the ridge. That is intentional. The ridge has been sized by an engineer, and actually it's taller than this. This is scrap from a different beam. This gap provides an opportunity for ventilation if you have a vented roof assembly. If you go like this and you go flush with the top, whatever hangs below, well, with sawn lumber, code doesn't allow us to do that. We can either order a ridge tall enough that there's full bearing all the way through, but it's most important to have full bearing at the heel of the rafter. So this is how we're going to nail them, just like any other common rafter at the ridge. And then after the fact, because they're I-joists, we're going to go ahead, let me adjust that just a tiny bit. Then we're going to go ahead and install the hangers. And that's what's going to provide our structural connection for I-joist rafters.
Are you picking up on the vibe that I-joist rafters take a little bit more work? They absolutely do. So why are we doing it? And they're more expensive. Why are we going through all the rigmarole? 2 reasons. 1, we were already doing it across the back to get the long rafter lengths. It's much less labor in that case because we're not handling each set of rafters twice. We'd have to split them on the back wall. Once we did that, we decided to do the front the same way. And we're going to show you that in a future video because this house is going to be net zero ready. And we want to show you some of the details. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I fully understand them, but my brother's been working on them and he's pretty excited. So stay tuned for that. I think that will be kind of interesting. It will be a learning experience for all of us. The beauty, of course, of I-joists is that, excuse me, the beauty, of course, of I-joists is that they're much lighter. It's easy to install. I could do it by myself. Incidentally, I installed these hangers out of order. I installed them to the ridge beam first. Technically, I really should have installed them to the underside like I showed you on the other one, the ones down lower. And just to explain this a little bit further, notice that we have our 2x4 tails. They have been scabbed to the side. And then we have our I-joists with notches for blocking. If I did this again, our engineer said we don't really have a big shear load, but if I did this again, I'd probably use LVL blocking.
All right, to cut myself, I just want to get the tooth lined up. Okay. Yeah, because I got a tooth there and a tooth at the bottom. Sorry. See, that tooth looks good. Boy, I got it pretty well dialed in. Tooth and tooth.
What we are setting up to do is cut the ridge cut or head cut. So that's that angle I showed you where it's going to attach at the ridge. Now you might be wondering, with the way that those I-joists are bundled, won't these all have different lengths, or at least every other piece have a different length? Yes. It doesn't matter because it's going to hide in our soffit. Also, I should have cut them just a little bit shorter because we ended up having to trim some of them. All the cutoff material, that's going to become our bird blocks, or the blocking between rafters. So this saved us scads of time, which is a technical term meaning lots of time. Why do I say that? Because we cut them all we didn't do anything. We just grabbed them with the forklift, threw the guide on it, and then cut them. So didn't even have to take measurements. Giddy up.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. Hey, we should do a James Blunt day. Just kidding. Yeah, and this overhang's going to be real close. Really close. So I think we're good.
Is it all starting to make sense just a little bit? The back side of this, now you see how both rake walls, that intermediate shear wall, the cant strips, and the long rafters, they go from ridge all the way to that plate. And everything needs to plane out. It's not overly complicated, but it is rather technical. You will notice that I am wearing fall protection. That is for 2 reasons. 1, because this is the interwebs. 2, because I have a respect for the sanctity of life. Beautiful. If you know, you know. And in all seriousness, we have never even come close to falling. Not even close. But that does not mean that it can't happen. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off about 1.5 inches on these because, of course, we took a number that was a little bit too tight. And then, and then there is another mistake. You can kind of see it. When I did the soffit ciphering, I really wish I would have done 2-foot soffits. We had to cut out a bunch of the backer for our soffits at every rafter. That was super annoying. So next time they build this house, 2-foot soffits, that will lower it out of the way. Earlier, I mentioned the air gap at the ridge. That little spacer block matches the difference in height between the top of the ridge and the rake wall. We don't get real scientific about it. We just want each rake wall to be the same. And we want it to be probably no more than 2 inches and no less than maybe 1.25 inches, 1 inch at the bare minimum. We try to shoot for right around 2 inches.
Barely.
1.5 inches. What am I? I don't even. Why do you guys even listen or watch this channel? Who else loves the thousands of staples that they use to wrap the glue lamps? And then you run your hand along it and you cut yourself. Nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody!
Comment below if you can remember what that movie is. I know, you know it, you know it. Okay, a couple things I want to point out while we're time-lapsing these back long rafters. After this roof was finished, and we were basically done with the framing, I invited our structural engineer out to do a walkthrough. This is the last job he's doing for us. It is super bittersweet. I've enjoyed working with him since 2004. Anyway, I asked him, Terry, walking through this house, we've got the 2-story shear wall there, fully sheathed gable walls. The back line is a continuous load path. Shear walls connected to the garage shear walls via that glue lamp. He just looked at me and said, this is probably a house worth being in an earthquake. So there is over-design in everything. He was explaining it to me a little bit, but the fact of the matter is we just have, that's the way the code works. That's the way things work. So we just go along with it. But it's nice to know that the way that we're building, if we execute the details properly, then whoever buys and lives in these homes is going to be safe. We are not cutting corners. Even though we're using I-joists, and there's probably going to be comments below that describe them as fireman killers. Well, did you know that the leading cause of death among firefighters, and you can Google this and look it up according to their own statistics? Heart attacks, overexertion, and struck by. That's right. They're more likely to get hit by a car or some other object than the house burning down because of I-joist rafters or trusses for that matter. So anyway, just build to the code. People are going to be safe.
If you can go up a little higher. Yeah, you go up over the ridge, Kyle. I got to butt this beam. Yeah.
We're gonna have that same issue where that get a hunk on. So I gotta cut it by 2 bolts.
Can you, I can try to pry this up. How's that? Okay. I can go over the beam.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Got to go up and over. Yeah. And then I can do whatever you need.
Kind of nice that intermediate wall meant we didn't have to do a whole lot of lifting. It kind of teeter-tottered. We ended up popping some screws and then pulling that beam in a little tighter to make the plumb cuts look better. Because it's all about making the plumb cuts look better. especially for YouTube. Incidentally, as we go up the driveway, notice those eco blocks. That's right, those are $70 a piece and they are 4,000 pounds. But that's how we kept people off of this site. Once we had about, I forget the total cost stolen at the beginning. They just ripped the fence down and drove up. And then, of course, those other guys that you saw in the other video that we caught. Here is the site before roof sheathing. Now you can kind of see how it all fits together. I-joist rafters, we've got blocks between the rafters at the ridge. That's to provide nailing for our roof sheathing. And it has the vent gap at the top. That matches in the bird blocks. You can see the tails. Those straps have chafe guards. Those are temporary anchors from Super Anchor. Notice the block line over that intermediate wall. We ended up drilling holes in those blocks instead of notching them. Because some of them got to be a little small and we thought they might break. So we went ahead and just drilled through the top flanges. Mostly, I just kind of wanted to show off my drone skills. I'm very slowly getting better at it. This thing was flat. So you notice there's the I-joist, and then over the garage was back to 2x12. I didn't bother showing that in this video. I think you've probably had enough roof framing for one video. Although in the next video, we're going to get into the overframe. By the way, as of this voiceover, it is 12:10 on August 30th. I got home at 2:30 this morning, 2:20. I was up shooting Milky Way near Port Angeles last night. So I am beat. Going to head to Ruby Beach tonight. Anyway, and try to shoot the bioluminescence and some Milky Way.
All there is to it is this is the laser, and we just see that's low. So I'm going to go ahead and just adjust this.
This is the Move Shoot Move Nomad Star Tracker. So you mount it to your tripod, you align it with Polaris or close to. It depends on the focal length of your camera.
Just tighten those screws. Now, when I look through, and I kind of have to do this, now I'm going to adjust it, and you'll see how.
What makes this unit fantastic is the very low-powered laser. I looked it up. This is not a danger to aircraft. You point it at Polaris, but Polaris is not technically right at north. It actually moves around throughout the day as the Earth rotates. What the Star Tracker does is it allows you to have longer shutter speeds, keep your ISO low, and that way you have much, much lower noise. Because as soon as you go past, this was a 20 millimeter focal length, much past 15 seconds, then you get stars that start to trail, meaning that they're no longer pinpricks, but they're lines. I was able to get 4-minute exposures with 35 millimeter focal length. That is insane to me.
Okay, that took a little longer than I wanted it to. Voila. Okay, now I can take this all apart. Let's go do some foreground stuff.
Because the 4-minute exposure was working at 35 millimeters, I kept moving the camera up, and I'll show you that image again, what I got. And then later I took some other selfie images. But you can see here, I think, that the Milky Way's moving. You also see the planes, the aircraft and satellites, but the camera rotates to follow the Milky Way. And that's what allows us to have really long exposures with low ISO, meaning low noise. You get a lot of dynamic range this way, a lot of signal. This image here was a 4-minute exposure at f4 on a 20 millimeter manual focus lens, ISO 800. All of these images taken with the Sony a7 IV, which has incredible low light performance anyway. This shot is 4 images at 35 millimeters going vertical. So I started at about the horizon and then with about a 50% overlap to make stitching easier, worked vertical. Again, each of these is a 4-minute. Then I went down to some rocks, just about scared myself. I was up there alone and I see like 8 pairs of eyes catching my headlamp. That's why they call it Deer Park, it's just the deer. But then I just played around with the self-timer standing on the rock. So that's just one image and then I just blended it in. Yeah, give it some interest, I guess.
Hey, welcome to Ruby Beach. We've got bioluminescence, we've got the Milky Way right over there. I've shot a bunch of time lapse just trying to get the bioluminescence. I wish I was up a little higher looking down, but when the waves crash you can really see the blue. Probably see that behind me. Of course, as I move around I'm probably totally blurry, so anyway, happy Friday everybody.
And here we go. This is at Ruby Beach on the west coast of Washington State in Olympic National Park. As of this moment, it is August 31st at 5:48 p.m. I took this on August 30th, about 11:30-ish, somewhere right around there. This is a single image. It's a 2-minute exposure setting up the tracker. And then you can see just the bioluminescence. This is actually the first shot. No, this was 10 o'clock. This is about the first shot of the night. I was just getting kind of set up. And then as the tide came in, I had to kind of scramble to move. Anyway, got some air glow there. Got Rho Ophiuchi. That's the constellation down on the right. And then, of course, the Dark Horse Nebula. You can see it right there in the center because it looks like a dark horse. And while I was down there, I was trying to see the bioluminescence, so I went ahead and pointed northwest, and I got some aurora. We had no idea that there was aurora last night. And then, of course, there's the waves, the bioluminescence. I took 20 shots, and I blended in just a little there on the left. That was from another shot, but I figured, let's just maximize the bioluminescence in this image, again at Ruby Beach in Olympic National Park. I gotta say it, Washington is a more beautiful state to live in than whatever state you live in. No, it's just, what a great thing. Pacific Northwest is beautiful. Travel the country. Every state has its own beauty. And also, by the way, I did not blend this, but look at all of the airplanes kind of right up there in the middle center. And if I blended the rest of the 20 images, there's just airplanes everywhere. And before we shut it down for this video, the gable end on the left, we're gonna frame that roof, overframe onto this roof in the next video. Here's how it all fits together. Hey, I just wanted to say once again, I really appreciate everybody that comments below. Please leave me a comment about anything. Yeah, there's some trolls. They're quite frankly rather annoying. But what would life be without trolls? Well, it'd probably be more fun. I don't know. But thank you very much for watching the videos. Leave comments, give it a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. This has definitely been a lot of fun. It's a learning experience. As you can see from my photography into videography is really what led into all of this. But I have to give my old editor at JLC, David Frayne, back in 2003. He got me into photography. He took some time to teach me. I got a chance to walk around with Gary Katz at the 2007 International Builders Show. He taught me the exposure triangle. And if it was not for their influence, I would not have the love of photography and getting out under the stars. There is nothing better for mental health than getting out into creation and enjoying the stars, the sound of the ocean, the scenery, travel, all of that good stuff. It is just, hey, this work stuff's fun. The other stuff's better. And thank you for supporting the channel. Because of that support, I'm able to buy some photography gear. It's really the only reason I do any of this, so I can afford the photography gear. So Dave, enjoy retirement, brother. Thank you so much. Gary, one of these days I'm gonna get down there and we're gonna go shoot Milky Way at Crater Lake. I say next spring or next summer. Anyway, please hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.